Imagine a 10th century caravan loaded with precious goods about to cross the vast Sahara. For these Muslim merchants, the journey was far more than a physical test against the scorching sands and unforgiving distances. It was a profound spiritual and legal gamble. How could they secure binding contracts or even reside permanently in these territories without compromising their faith or their fortunes?
Hey folks, I'm Professor Darius. In this video, we explore how 10th century Muslim merchants lived and traded in ancient Ghana, unlocking the massive wealth of the Trans-Saharan network.
Islamic law, known as Sharia, was designed to function within the abode of Islam, its established territories. But once they ventured into the lands of early Ghana, ruled by non-Muslim kings, they were entering what was legally considered the abode of war. This wasn't just a matter of geography, it was a fundamental legal and theological distinction. The abode of Islam, Dar al-Islam, was where Islamic law prevailed, ensuring justice and order according to its principles. Conversely, the abode of war, Dar al-Harb, represented lands outside Islamic rule where different legal systems or none at all from a Muslim perspective existed. Merchants, risking their livelihoods in Ghana, faced a profound dilemma. How could their contracts hold up, and how could their communities thrive when the very ground they walked on was considered legally untrustworthy? Consider the practical questions that kept these merchants awake at night. If a North African investor provided capital for a journey to Ghana, how could they ensure repayment if the local king didn't recognize their Islamic contracts? What legal recourse did they have if disputes arose? Furthermore, as trade flourished and Muslim communities grew in places like Koumbi, Saleh, how could these residents maintain their faith and communal practices when they were living under the jurisdiction of a non-Muslim ruler? These weren't minor details. They were foundational challenges to the very possibility of sustained Trans-Saharan trade. This is where the genius of 10th century Maliki jurists, particularly a scholar named al-Qabisi, comes into play. The true highway of Trans-Saharan trade, the invisible infrastructure that connected North Africa to the powerful empires of West Africa, wasn't paved with stone or gold. It was paved with fatwas, authoritative legal opinions issued by Islamic scholars. These legal innovations created the necessary loopholes that allowed Islam to not only integrate into the Ghana Empire, but to thrive, transforming the Sahara from a hostile barrier into a highly structured corridor of commerce and cultural exchange. This legal flexibility was key to West Africa's economic might. Let's dive into the first major legal hurdle: the Qirad contract. In Maliki Islamic law, Qirad was a sophisticated profit-sharing partnership, quite similar to modern venture capital. An investor in a secure Muslim land like North Africa would provide capital to an agent, essentially a traveling merchant, who would then journey south with the goods. The agent would manage the trade, and any profits generated would be shared between them according to a pre-agreed ratio. This system was vital for funding large-scale risky ventures, but it hit a major snag when the destination was outside Islamic jurisdiction. Under strict Orthodox Maliki doctrine, a Qirad contract that specified a journey to the Bilad al-Sudan, the land of the blacks or West Africa, was ruled intrinsically invalid. Why? Because the region was considered not trustworthy. The absence of Islamic legal enforcement meant that the fundamental conditions for a valid partnership, particularly the ability to legally enforce contractual obligations, were absent. This created a massive roadblock for trade, as North African investors were understandably hesitant to risk their capital if their contracts had no legal standing once their agents crossed the Sahara. The vast wealth of Ghana's gold fields remained tantalizingly out of reach due to this legal technicality. Enter al-Qabisi, the brilliant Maliki jurist who saw a path through this legal labyrinth. His ingenious solution was not to declare the Bilad al-Sudan trustworthy, but to reframe the legal relationship entirely. He ruled that while the Qirad partnership itself was technically void due to the destination's non-Islamic status, the traveling agent was still fully liable for the investor's original capital. The relationship was thus legally transformed. The agent was treated not as a partner but as a simple debtor, bound by Maliki contract law back home to repay the principal amount. This clever distinction bypassed the issue of legal enforcement in Ghana.
This legal distinction had massive commercial implications.
It immediately instilled confidence in wealthy North African elites, giving them a legally secure framework to fund risky, long-distance caravans to Ghana, knowing their investments were protected under Maliki law back home, regardless of what happened in the Bilad al-Sudan. They poured capital into the Trans-Saharan trade. This wasn't just about individual merchants, it was about state-level economic leverage. This legal innovation transformed the economic landscape, facilitating an unprecedented flow of wealth that fueled the growth and power of both North African and West African states, especially Ghana. As trade exploded after 800 AD, Muslim merchants didn't just pass through Ghana, they established permanent quarters. Cities like Koumbi Saleh, the capital of Ghana, and the trading hub of Tegdaus became home to thriving Muslim communities. This created a new challenge. How could these communities maintain their religious and legal autonomy while residing permanently in a non-Muslim state? Islamic law dictates that Muslims must live under Islamic judicial administration. This wasn't just a preference, it was a fundamental requirement for their communal identity and spiritual well-being, creating a complex political and social situation. This wasn't merely about personal piety, it was about ensuring that commercial disputes, family matters, and criminal cases were handled according to Sharia, which was seen as divinely ordained and comprehensive. Living outside this framework was a significant concern for pious Muslims. Without their own courts and judges, their community life and commercial practices would lack legitimacy and order from their religious perspective. This created pressure for a legal framework that respected both the authority of the Ghanaian king and the religious obligations of the Muslim residents. Once again, Al-Qabisi delivered a groundbreaking ruling. His second fatwa declared that if a location in the Bilad al-Sudan became a permanent residence of Muslims, these communities were not only permitted, but legally obliged to elect their own nazir or supervisor, who would function as a judge. Crucially, this nazir was authorized to adjudicate disputes and manage communal affairs with authority from the ruler of the place, meaning the non-Muslim Ghanaian king. This was a stroke of diplomatic genius, acknowledging the king's sovereignty while granting Muslims their essential self-governance. This ruling created a unique model of coexistence, a semi-legal framework of extraterritoriality. The non-Muslim king of Ghana effectively granted Muslim communities judicial autonomy, allowing them to establish their own commercial courts, headed by a Qadi or Nazir. In return, the king secured the immense wealth and economic stability that the Trans-Saharan gold-for-salt trade brought. It was a pragmatic political arrangement. The Ghanaian rulers understood that facilitating Muslim legal and religious needs was a small price to pay for the massive economic benefits and the stable flow of trade that enriched their empire. This shows complex political negotiation, not just conquest. This legal flexibility stemmed from a foundational Maliki legal doctrine, the prioritization of social order. Maliki jurists believed that any government, even a non-Muslim one, was preferable to anarchy. This principle, known as maslaha, or public interest, allowed them to make pragmatic decisions that ensured stability and prosperity for Muslim communities, even if it meant compromising on strict ideological purity. It wasn't about converting the king by force. It was about creating a stable environment where trade could flourish and Muslim life could be sustained, enriching everyone involved. This pragmatic approach meant that Sahelian Muslim communities generally did not seek to overthrow the non-Muslim kings of Ghana. Instead, they became invaluable commercial partners, integrating themselves into the political and administrative fabric of the empire. They served as trusted court advisors, skilled treasurers managing the vast wealth generated by trade, and expert scribes introducing literacy and record-keeping. Their expertise and connections were indispensable, further cementing the symbiotic relationship between the Muslim trading communities and the Ghanaian monarchy. This was a sophisticated diplomatic and economic strategy, not a passive acceptance. This legal compromise manifested physically in the landscape of early West African cities. Many, like Koumbi Saleh, the capital of ancient Ghana, were often built as dual cities. One distinct area served as the Royal Indigenous Administrative Center, showcasing traditional architecture and cultural practices. A separate, often slightly distant but highly commercialized Muslim town thrived alongside it, featuring mosques, North African-style buildings, and bustling markets. This spatial syncretism was a visible testament to the peaceful yet distinct coexistence forged by al-Qabizi's fatwas, allowing both communities to maintain their unique identities and governance. However, not everyone agreed with this accommodationist approach. In the 11th century, a powerful new movement emerged from the Sahara, the Almoravids, led by Ibn Yassin. They were purists who rejected the Maliki legal compromises, viewing them as a dangerous dilution of Islamic principles. The Almoravids asserted that living under pagan authority and paying taxes to a non-Muslim king was a form of apostasy, forfeiting a Muslim's protected legal status. This created a profound ideological clash between the quietist trade networks, built on legal compromise, and the militant purism of the Almoravids. This ideological struggle exploded into a violent physical clash. In 1054 to 1055 CE, Almoravid forces attacked and sacked the wealthy trading city of Oudahast, a crucial hub in the Trans-Saharan network. This act wasn't just a military conquest. It was a powerful statement against the legal compromises that had allowed such prosperous Muslim communities to thrive under non-Muslim rule. The sack temporarily disrupted the quietist trade networks and sent shockwaves across the Sahel, demonstrating the intense conflict between those who prioritize strict adherence to doctrine and those who champion pragmatic coexistence. Ultimately, the long-term tension between purism and accommodation was resolved not by continued conflict, but by a profound shift within West African leadership. Later rulers, such as the powerful kings of Mali and Songhai, chose to convert to Islam themselves. By adopting the faith, they internalized the legal debate within their own royal courts. They combined Islamic legitimacy with traditional African kingship, creating hybrid systems of governance. This allowed for the full integration of Islamic law and culture while maintaining the strong centralized states that defined these magnificent empires. The legacy of this peaceful and pragmatic integration of Islam is profound. It led to the widespread adoption of Maliki legal traditions across the Sahel, laying the groundwork for centuries of stable governance and thriving commerce. It fueled the growth of legendary centers of learning like Timbuktu, where libraries housed hundreds of thousands of manuscripts. This wasn't just about trade, it was about the enduring heritage of a tolerant, syncretic Islam in West Africa, one that embraced cultural diversity while building powerful, intellectual, and economically vibrant societies. This is a testament to African agency and strategic adaptation.
So often when we study empires, we focus on the visible, the weight of gold, the mountains of salt, the grandeur of palaces. But the true engine of West African state, centralization, and the spread of Islam was an invisible legal infrastructure. The careful crafting of contracts provided the stability, trust, and predictability essential for vast commercial networks to flourish, proving that sometimes the most powerful forces are the ones you can't see.